Hello. Okay, today I'm going to take a look at Stephenson's rocket. I saw there was only one video for this and it wasn't in English, so I thought I'd go ahead and throw one together. So this is kind of like Through the Desert. This is a Knizia game, and you're going to be building pathways like you would in Through the Desert with camels, except here you're using tracks. So what we have here is we have the money, which is quite large. You can see it's about 4.5 inches in one direction and 3 in another. So very large pieces of money to use. Additionally, you have stock in, let's see, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 companies. And you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 starting railways where these little trains are. You have towns. You have cities with different resources in them, and each player gets a set of stations that they can place on the board. And these are the train tracks. You either have a straight or a curved track, and you have passenger tokens. So you have 3 things you can do on your turn, and you don't own, like if I move the orange, I'm not in charge of orange. Anyone can move any train, just like in most train stock games. So you have 3 actions you can do. You can do any action twice. So for example, I can take a token from a city, or I could take 2 tokens from a city, and that would be my turn. Or I can move this train 1 space in that direction, and then I would take 1 stock of that company for moving that train. And for my second action, I can take a token, or I can move another train. Maybe I'll move this train over here, and then I would get a green stock. Okay, so those are the first 2 things. The third thing you can do is you could place one of your stations on the board. So let's say for my next turn, I want to place this station. I can't place it around the train, and I can't place it on any of the city or towns that are there. So since I can't place it around here, but maybe I want to connect to it, maybe I'll just set it over here. So that's 1 move. And then maybe, let's say I take this token. All right, so that's another move. And then it comes back around to me. And let's say I move this train here, which means I would then put a piece of track behind it showing which direction it went. I move the train, so I get a stock, and I have now connected to this city. And so what's going to happen is, for being connected to the city, the person who has the most tokens, there's only 3 available, the person who has the most is going to get $2,000, and the person who has the second most is going to get $1,000. So I'm the only person with a token, so I would get $2,000. On the next move, whoever moves this again, they can move it here to share with the station. Cities, if you're next to it, you're connected. Towns, if you're next to it, you're connected. But for the stations, you actually have to have them on the track. So let's say this gets moved here. You would take a piece of track and you would make it curved. And now this train has now connected to this station and or this town, and there's a station on the track. So what happens is, whenever you reach a town, there's a payout for the stations, and the person who has the most stations gets $1,000 for every town and city the line is connected to. So the green player is the only one with stations on this track, so he would get $1,000 to $3,000 for that. And then, the train can move forward, and if it does that, you would just put another piece of track, leave this station on it, and the train would move forward. Now, when you have a train and you put it into a hex, you have to put it in the direction, like you can't just put it in here however you want. You have to put it in the direction that it was traveling, because you can only move to one of these 3, either straight ahead, off to the upper left, or off to the upper right. Those are the only distances you can go. So that's your choices. You can take 1 or 2 city tokens, because you get 2 actions. You can move the train one distance and then another train 1 distance, or move the train 1 distance, take a token, or move the train and place a city out there, a station out there. And so you just keep doing that. And as you move the train, you're getting these stocks that are building up in your hand. Now, one of the things you do with the stock is, let's say this train is over here, like this. And so someone's going to move this train, and let's say they move it here, all right? Somebody can call a veto. If you have shares in the stock, you can call a veto, meaning since you have part ownership, you get to potentially make a decision for the train. And somebody may not want to have the train move here, because what happens is if you move a train next to another train or another train's track, if this was here and it had track here, the same thing would happen. What would happen is there would be a merger between the 2 companies. So what happens is the train that moves in merges with the other train. So this track would go away. You would then just put up train track pieces to connect to this line, and now the orange train would come off the board and all of the orange stock would go away. Additionally, what would happen is anyone who has stock in the company, for every 2 stock that you have, it's going to convert into 1 piece of stock from the other company. So you turn into orange to get 1 green. And if there's not enough green stock to hand out to people, then you have these like other stocks that you put into your green pile. And you have to keep the pile separately because of that reason. Additionally, whoever has the most stock during a merger is going to get a payout. So let's go back to the situation where this train was here. All right. And so it had been here, and somebody said, I want it to go here, which would cause a merger. All right. So another player, if they have stock in the company, can call a veto round. And what happens is the person to the left of whoever moved the train has the option, if they own stock in the company, to bid stock that they own to veto the action. So like one player could say, let's say the person to my left didn't have any stock, so they pass. Then the next person bids 1 stock, and then goes to the next person and they bid 2 stock. Then it comes to me, I'm the last person. And since I moved the train, I get last bid. All I have to do is match the highest bid. I don't have to supersede it, I just have to match it. So someone bid 2 stock, and then I say, all right, I bid 2 stock. Well, then what would happen is whoever wins the auction puts their stock back that they bid, and they get to move the train. So had I done this and I won the stock round, I would win. If somebody before me who called the veto, if they bid a stock, they would tell you where they're going to move it. So let's say the first person skipped, the second person bids 1 stock, and for 1 stock he says, I'm going to move it here. Then the next person, who maybe was the person who called the veto round and called it because they were going to move it, they might pass, okay, because somebody's already going to move it there for 1 stock. But they might see that I have 2 stock, and so I could outbid that 1 person's stock, so maybe they do jump in. Maybe they have 3, and they say, well, I bid 3 stock to make sure it goes that way. And then it comes back to me, I only have 2 stocks, so I can't win. The other person turns in 3 stock, and now the train's going to go in this direction. Of course, it can always come back around and meet up with the green route later. So you're going to keep doing this, and then eventually, as trains merge, like I said, the stocks are removed from the board. And so eventually they start going away. And one thing that can happen is, let's say this was here, I'm sorry. So let's say that was there. And so then the person moved the orange one to this spot. All right. So now this track is merging with the green track. All right. So now the green can't go in any of these directions out here. It can only go down in these directions. But since this track is blocking it from getting out, it's like stuck in this corner down here. as long as there's nowhere else for it to connect to, it's already connected to this place, it's already connected to this place, and it's already connected to this place. What would happen is the trinket would stay on the board, but the stock would get removed from the board. You would take the stock away. However, if the track was in such a way that, it could, let's say it wasn't connected to this town and it got merged, well, you would keep the stock on the board until this went and connected to this available town. So that's one of the other rules. So anyway, you keep doing this. You're choosing whether to take goods. Remember, the person with the most goods when a train connects to the city gets $2,000 for having the most. Second player gets $1,000. When you do the connections to the towns, the person with the most stations on the track line gets $1,000 per city and town it's connected to. The person with the second most gets half of that amount, rounded down if you needed. If this person went and collected $3,000 and there was someone else in second place, 3,000 divided by 2 is 1,500. There's no $500, so you round down to 1,000. So anyway, like I said, you do this until there's only one stock left in the game, or all 60 of these tracks have been used. That triggers the end of the game. And then you do final scoring. Okay, before I get into final scoring, I'm going to mention one other thing. So let's say the train was here, okay, and let's say I'm the person who puts down the green stations, and let's say the player put down these beige ones, put that station there. And so this train, let's say it gets moved to this spot. All right, so then the track is behind it, and then the train gets moved to this spot. All right, if I'm the person who's in charge of these things, nothing happens. But if I'm the green player and I'm the one who connects to the station, I am going to get one of these passenger tokens. All right, and passenger tokens can award you points at the end of the game. All right, so let's say it's the end of the game. So it's going to pay out. 3 things are going to pay out. First, you have all these tokens that you've collected that are going to pay out. But before they pay out, you have to see that the cities that they're associated with are actually connected to a rail line somewhere on the board. So for example, here we have Guildford, all right? I have 2 Guildford tokens, but that's not connected to any railway line, so I am going to lose these 2 tokens, all right? And they just go off the board. Here's London, and I have 2 London tokens, so those aren't going to count. And let's just say for the rest of the game, I have all these tokens here. I have passenger tokens, and I have these different resource tokens. All right, the person who has the most of a resource, so whoever has like the most barrels, they're going to get $6,000. And the person who has the second most of this resource is going to get $3,000. And then whoever has the most of this resource is going to get $6,000. Second most, most is $6,000, second most $3,000. And same for all these. So you're going to total up all these different tokens. Then you're going to score stations, all right? So for a railway line that's still in business, you're going to count how many stations are on the line. So this line has 1, 2, 3 stations. All right, the person who has the most, which is this person here, is going to get $1,000 for every city and town it's connected to. And the second person with the second most stations is going to get half that amount. And then lastly, there are shares. Whoever has the most shares in a railway line that still exists on the board, they're going to get $1,000 for each city and town connected to the railway line, and the person in second place is going to get half of that amount. And so then you just count up all your money, and whoever has the most money wins.